Okay, now that you've drilled the pilot holes for your axles, the front and back, the next step is to drill a pilot hole for just the brake. You want to go ahead and try to drill that now before you put everything else on this main frame. It just makes it easier. You can always make, if there's an adjustment later or you put the hole in the wrong spot, you can always drill it later. It's just a little more difficult. So I tend to put my parking brake about 30.5 inches from the back. So measure from the back, go 30.5 inches. Make your mark. So just remember, when you're getting ready to drill the hole, make sure that you think about where you're drilling the hole, because I just drilled on the left side instead of the right side, and since most kids are right-handed, you want to make it easier for them to reach for the parking brake by putting it on the right-hand side. Well, the cool thing is I now have a hole on both sides, so in case I want to flip the brake for right and left-hander, I could. Or I could install two brakes, I suppose. Alright, so the next step is to attach your front axle. Okay, so the front axle is really going to be made up. You're going to want to have, here's your main bolt. You'll have one washer for the top. You'll have 3 washers in the middle and 1 washer on the bottom. The reason you have 3 in the middle is it allows this to turn. And then you can either use a locking nut at the bottom or a locking washer to help hold the nut at the bottom. So start by add your 3 washers. That makes it easy for the front wheel to turn. And apparently I got the wrong locking washer. All right. One other thing you can do is take 2 nuts, and you don't want to have it too tight, because you want this to be able to turn, but you don't want to have it too loose either. Then you put on a second nut to sort of hold the first one in place. That's the front. Now we're going to the back. Like before, go ahead and make sure that it's square. And then while you have it here, make sure it's still square. Drill a couple pilot holes. There we go. Now, I've got the basic frame laid out. Okay, the next thing I install is the back support, which is that piece that has one of them that's cut at about a 15-degree angle. Actually, it is a 15-degree angle, and it's going to go on the back. That's what the backrest is going to go to. Now, before I go there, I do want to give a cautionary tale about the back and rear axle. You'll notice on this back axle that the bolt comes, there's just enough the bolt for the nut to tie into. Now, if you had bought a piece that was a little bit longer so that there was extra sticking out, you may want to cut it off. And the reason is, when this comes off the back of a lot of ramps, if this bolt here is too long, then this bolt catches on the back of the ramp and either slows down the Cub Mobile or prevents it from moving altogether. Now the backrest, the front of the backrest is going to be 14.5 inches from the back of the Cub Mobile. So we're going to mark our line. And obviously, if it's off by a quarter inch or a half inch, it doesn't really matter that much. Now you may not have had this, but I did, for when I put together Cub Mobiles, I go ahead and pre-drill pocket holes. Now I actually have a pocket hole clamp that allows me to clamp this in place like this. If you have one, great. If you don't, they're awesome. If you're ever considering getting one, it sticks in place. If you don't have one, you can always use a clamp like this and squeeze the two pieces together to hold it while you put your pocket hole drill. Now you don't have to, I use pocket hole screws because I happen to have some, but you don't have to. Any old screw can work, because in this situation you're going to have a ton of extra support back here. Okay, now that you've got your backrest support, it's time to attach the back support brackets to help hold this in place, especially with the kids leaning against it, and just helps provide more rigidity to the overall Cub Mobile. The other thing I would suggest is at this time, just take a drill and a chisel and just chisel out right here. It's about, I'd say, it's about 2.5 inches from the bottom, and start at 2.5 inches at the bottom, go 3 inches high, and then 2.5 inches in from the side to drill your section where, and that's where you're going to run your belt, so that you can have a seat belt for the Cub Mobile. And it attaches just like this. Now, when you drill this out, this is MDF, so if you do not put a backer board, put something behind it as you drill it, you're going to have tear out like this. And that's how I know. I tried to actually drill this on my drill press and realized even with the drill press it causes tear out. So make sure you have another piece of MDF behind it to prevent the tear out, and then go ahead and start laying it out so you can start attaching it. Okay, so when you go to install these, you're going to notice that the top of this backrest support is a little bit higher than the backrest. I must have made a miscalculation when I was cutting these, and so you have one of two choices. You can either cut this top part off or move the backrest, the back piece that goes here. You can either move this a little bit higher like this, or leave it where it normally is, and then you can trim this. I would say make that decision based on whether you've got the age of your children. of your scouts, the average height of the scouts. So if you have Webelos 2s, you could go ahead and make the backrest a little bit higher. If you've got Tigers, put it down here, and then just trim this top. So sorry about that mistake. I'm not sure how I made a miscalculation when I was cutting these. So I have found that I really only need about 4 1¼ inch screws along the bottom, and then 4 along this way in order to provide adequate support. Now, you can use any old screw. These happen to be, I've used these drywall screws because I had a ton left over from a project years ago, and I've used them 3 years in a row and never had a problem with them. So, but I do pre-drill into the MDF as well as I go ahead and pre-drill into the MDF with a drill bit that also includes a countersink so that these drywall screws sink into the wood rather than sticking out. You can also pre-drill and then use this countersink here if you want, just so that the screws sink down into the MDF. Okay, now that you've pre-drilled your holes for your back support brackets, go ahead and just line them up by hand. Nothing fancy here. Just make sure it feels good on that back support. And if you're doing this by yourself like me, a couple clamps come in real handy here. Even one can allow you to just hold things in place. Make sure that this is lined up well. And then you can go ahead and start drilling. Now at this stage, since this is actually being constructed for bears, I am going to go ahead and cut this piece off that right here, and just so it's level. So if you're before you attach the next piece, go ahead and cut this top off if that's what your plan is.